Hey guys, what's happening? Chris here. There are a lot of weird ideas and concepts that people think about when they hear about someone who designs games. Some people think that game designers are rich and famous, while others think that you just play games all day. In this video, I am not only going to talk about myths related to game design as a profession, but also myths related to the process of game design as well as the success of a game. Keep watching in order to learn more about 10 myths or misconceptions that people have about game design. The first myth is that you need to be a programmer or know programming to be a game designer. While certainly helpful, this is simply not true. Game design is about thinking about the systems and interactions of the game, not about coding them. However, it is always a plus if you know coding, as it will allow you to be able to prototype your own games if you're an indie game designer, or to be able to differentiate yourself from other candidates if you're applying to a job at a AAA company. The next myth is that you need to be good at playing video games to make you a good game designer. Playing games can be a good experience to have when you're designing your own games. This can serve as an inspiration for you to get ideas of what might work depending on how you're interacting with the game. Plus, looking at what other developers are doing in the space can provide a lot of inspiration for new concepts that you might come up with. Notice how I said play instead of being good at playing? I think there is a huge difference in being skilled at playing a game and just playing to experience the story or to do some research for your games. Personally, I think that playing games is a huge asset to help you stay up to date, to do your own research on how game mechanics work in other games, and to provide inspiration so you can see how a game mechanic is used and perhaps come up with your own twist or personal touch to make it better or different. The next myth is that game designers are super rich and famous. The game industry makes billions of dollars, and as a result, people tend to think that game developers make a lot of money just by working in the industry. However, the people who get the money are company investors and owners. Game developers can earn a big salary, and some of them might become millionaires, but the majority of them are just going to work for a salary just like in any other field. The next myth is that game design is easy, or that you're going to be playing games all day as a game designer. A lot of people think that being a game designer is easy, because you just need to play games every day. In fact, every time I tell anyone that I'm a game designer, this is the first thing they say. In reality, game design is really hard. You not only have to come up with good game mechanics, but also need to communicate them to your player and make sure that they understand them. You need to do all that without telling them a single word, and they also need to have fun. To top it off, you have to have sharp communication skills to be able to iterate when something isn't working. You get the point. Fun? Yes. Easy? Not so much. The next myth is that a good idea makes for a good game. This is similar to the previous one, and it talks about how difficult game design really is. Someone can have a great idea for a game mechanic, but implementing it in a game is an entirely different story. There is so much that needs to be worked on to get that idea to be good in a game that it is almost overwhelming. You need to prototype the idea, then you need to test it, you need to iterate on it, etc. Just having a good idea will not take you very far if you don't know what you're doing. The next myth is that the more realistic the game, the better it is. I see this in a lot of amateur game designers who want to impress people with their game. Then, when you play it, you realize their game just ends up being a beautiful environment that you can walk around in, but then the game mechanics barely exist, if at all, or are unpolished and don't make much sense. Graphics has to be the least of your concerns at first. A game designer should focus on the basics of the game and create a good prototype that they can iterate on. I have a video about this that talks about the main mistakes designers make when prototyping games. Feel free to check it out. The next myth is that someone is going to steal your idea. I see a lot of designers that are afraid to share their game ideas with people in order to get feedback on them. They get scared that someone else is going to come up and steal their idea. But think about this. A good game is not just a game idea, but also good execution. Also, I will bet that if two people create a game with the same idea, it will most likely turn out different. In Spanish, we have a saying that each mind is its own world, and I think it's true. Our minds, lived experiences, and ideas are different and will shape how we see and do things. Finally, Remember that the chances that one random person is going to take that idea and spend the time and effort it takes to actually develop a game is very slim. It is more important for you to share your ideas and get feedback than to live in fear of it being poached. After all, there are many more than one platformer game, right? The next myth is that it is impossible to get a job as a game designer. I get it. It is really hard to get a job in the industry, not only for design, but also for programming and art. However, the jobs and opportunities are out there if you know how to find them. There are a lot of things that people can do to improve their chances of getting a job in the industry. Although it is hard to get one, if you keep developing your portfolio in a way that shows your skills and what you can do, employers are going to notice and you will eventually find a position. I spent almost a year and a half looking until I finally got one. If you want to learn about my story, here's a video I made about it. The next myth is that you need a games degree to become a game designer. The game industry is a weird industry in that education really doesn't matter as much to employers. What really matters is your experience creating games and portfolio. Even if you only have a high school diploma, if your portfolio is amazing and contains a diverse and strong set of shipped games, you will probably stand out more than the person who just graduated from the top games design program in the nation. I personally hold a master's degree, which in my particular situation was necessary, and I share more about it in the video about my story. However, education can only get you so far. That doesn't exempt you from needing the experience of being through a game cycle and learning the highs and lows of every stage of development. Shipping a game is super hard, especially when you reach the final stages of polishing a game to make it shippable. It takes so much work, and it is about 90% harder than the rest. That is why shipping games in this industry is the gold standard of valuable experience employers tend to focus on. The next myth is that the first game you design is going to be super successful. Game design, as any other discipline, takes practice. It is very likely that the first game you create is probably going to suck. The good thing is this experience will help you get the expertise you need in order to be able to design better games. The more you keep at it, the faster you will get what it takes to design a game that is really good and fun to play. Just keep in mind that it is a hard process, and sometimes it can be very frustrating. The next and final mistake is that all the good game studios are in the US. I get this a lot, and I don't think that is true. There are studios all around the world. Take a look at CD Projekt Red, creators of The Witcher and Cyberpunk 2077. Tequila Works, creators of the game Rime. We also see the creators of Limbo who are Danish and create amazing games, or all the studios in India that focus on hyper-casual games, to name a few. Game development can be amazing anywhere in the world, because talent can be found everywhere. Obviously, the US is where most big studios are based, but that doesn't mean that you can find really good studios that create amazing work outside of the US. You might just have to look a little harder. As you can see, game design is very different from how people perceive it is. However, that doesn't mean that it is not fun or a cool job to have. If you have what it takes and you really enjoy doing it, I think that you can get to feel really happy and fulfilled every day. And that's it, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. What other misconceptions do you think people have when thinking about game design? Please let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you like this video, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. See you next time!